All right.
Here's my little dog, and she wants to say hi.
Oh. Hey, puppy dog.
I better put her away.
All right.
She'll be barking. All right. Oh, that was so cute. Okay, I can start the webinar, which will open the meeting, and then Bernie, if you want to take it away. Okay, here we go.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the West Fargo City Commission meeting for December 7th, 2020. We're pleased that you're joining us this evening. Would you please join me in a pledge of allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The next order of business is to approve the order of the agenda as distributed. Commissioners, it has been in your packet. It is out there for the public review as well.
Make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Simmons. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Jurdovic seconds. It's been moved and seconded to approve the order of the agenda as presented. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Item C is the approval of the minutes from November 16, 2020. The minutes have been distributed. Are there any additions or corrections or questions?
I'll make the motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Olson. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner George seconds. Been moved and is seconded to approve the minutes of November 16th, 2020. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Next order of business is the building report and building permit report that has been distributed. Are there any questions or concerns with regard to that report?
I would make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Jurdovic. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Olson seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the building permit as distributed. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The next order of business is to consider the consent agenda. There are items A through G. They have been distributed and are in your packet.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner George. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Jurdovic, second.
Yep.
Been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda as distributed, A through G. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Moving on to the regular agenda. Item number 1 is a public hearing for the Southdale 4th Edition, a replat, vacation of 9th Street West from Cheyenne Street to 2nd Street West, and a conditional use permit for a 10-unit multiple dwelling building within the R-2 zoning district based on the conditions of staff. Mr. Sober.
Thank you, Mr. President and Commissioners. Tonight we have before you a few items within one. It's a plat for property near the Cass County Housing Authority project, a continued expansion of their project. Within that plat, they're looking to vacate 9th Avenue West from Cheyenne Street to 2nd Street West. Within that area, they're looking at providing more open space and a more campus feel for the development. The R2 zoning district, which it's already zoned, doesn't need to change. However, they do want to do one 10-unit townhome. The R2 district allows for 1 to 8 unit structures as a permitted use. As a conditional use, they can have 9 to 12 unit structures. So one of those properties within that, or one of those buildings within that project will require a conditional use permit. So, with regard to that conditional use, the conditions that need to be met is that fire requirements need to be met for that type of building, and the building must have one property line which adjoins either directly or across an alley, a commercial or an R3 district. The property to the north meets the R3 district standards within its PUD, that large apartment complex there. So it appears to meet there. Property owners within 350 feet were notified. No comments have been received to date. We did have a little bit of a pause on this to clarify the vacation. Originally, we had thought that they were only going to vacate a portion of it, and they determined that they wanted to vacate the whole thing. City staff has reviewed the plat, has the necessary easements that we require for city infrastructure, and are recommending approval of the plat, as did the Planning Commission at their November 10th, 2020 meeting. So tonight I'd ask the President to open up for a public hearing regarding the vacation of the right-of-way. However, the plat and the conditional use permit require a public hearing. That being said, of course, if there's anybody, I'd encourage you to hear their concerns if they do have them in regard to those things. So with that, I'm available for any questions. Applicants should be available on the line. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Soberg. Questions for Mr. Soberg?
I have one.
Brad, question?
Yes, Tim, on your drawings, on the sketches from the architect, I'm just looking at the one with the finished product. I don't know what page would be, 93 on my huge packet, but just want to clarify you're saying that the street is not going to be vacated for the whole length of that section, but it looks like part of it's going to still connect to a driveway or a parking lot?
Yeah, and I can sure pull it up here too if that's okay.
I just want to make sure I'm clear on what I'm seeing in the packet.
Yeah, and I think you're referring to, you see this site plan on mine here?
Yep, that's what I'm looking at.
Yeah, so that entire road will be vacated, meaning it won't be public right-of-way anymore.
Okay.
But the road will still exist there. They have that torn up to make some connections to sewer and water right now. They would repave that into their parking lot, but we would have both sewer, water, storm, but also public access easement. So they'll be required to construct that to a width approved by Public Works and Fire.
Okay, you've answered my question. Thank you.
Additional questions for Mr. Soberg? So to clarify again, Mr. Soberg, the public hearing is with regard to the vacate and not the R2 zoning?
Yes, Your Honor, the partial vacation of the road.
Are there any additional questions for Mr. Soberg? Hearing none, we'll close the regular agenda and move into the public hearing for the Southdale 4th Edition, a replat and vacation of 9th Avenue West from Cheyenne Street to 2nd Street West. Is there any public comment with regard to this issue?
We have Mr. Dan Madler, who has raised his hand to provide some comments.
Mr. Madler.
President Dardis and members of the Commission, thank you for the opportunity to be here today. For the record, my name is Dan Madler. I am the CEO of Beyond Shelter Incorporated, the nonprofit affordable housing developer of Sierra Townhomes. And I am joined here on this virtual meeting by our partner, Blake Strelo, the Executive Director of the Housing Authority of Cass County. Beyond Shelter and the Housing Authority teams, Blake and myself, are all excited to be moving the Sierra Townhomes project forward. Sierra Townhomes is a final phase of a multi-year, multi-phase project to replace publicly obsolete public housing units on Cheyenne Street. And with that, I would stand for any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Madler. Questions for Mr. Madler? Is there anyone else that would like to speak from the public with regard to this issue? Southdale 4th Edition, a replat to vacate 9th Avenue West to Cheyenne Street. Is there anyone from the public that would like to address this issue? Hearing none, I close the public hearing. We return to the regular agenda. Commissioners, are there any additional questions? I have a couple of comments that I'd like to make. With regard to a vacating of a public street in the city of West Fargo, there's been some debate over some of the other vacates that have taken place within the city that the public has come forward to me. And the initial discussions with regard to this, for the first phase of the project, if you will, it was to partially vacate. And I believe on November 11th, we got a request to totally vacate. So that dialogue had changed. I would ask that planning and zoning, engineering, and all of our departments, we set forth a policy with regard and the possibility of some type of application for the vacating of streets, because there's a number of other ones that are being under consideration right now in our city, and it's normally developer driven to better utilize their space. And in this case, I've met with Mr. Madler and Blake at the site. We've walked the site, went up to 4th floor and observed it from a overview, and this their plan is solid. I mean, the fact that they're going to have access from Cheyenne Street to their parking lot. So the issue was never, with me, the issue was never this piece of property. The issue was the process of vacating streets in the city of North Dakota, or city of West Fargo, excuse me. So I've had considerable discussion with planning and zoning, as well as Mr. Solberg, and of course, again, Dan and Blake were very generous hosts when we were on site to explain their desire for what they're going to do. I do believe that what they're doing makes the property even better for the residents that are going to live there because of the amount of green space. But again, we are vacating a public street in the city of West Fargo. And that is my biggest concern. And moving forward, I hope we have lengthy discussions whenever we consider that type of thing. Is there any other discussion with regard to item number 1? With regarding the vacating of 9th Avenue West from Cheyenne Street to 2nd Street West, as well as a conditional use permit for the 10-unit multiple dwelling building within an R2 zoning district, based on the conditions listed by staff.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Jurdevig. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Simmons seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the vacation of 9th Street Avenue West from Cheyenne Street to 2nd Street West, and a conditional use permit for a 10-unit multiple dwelling building within an R2 zoning district. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Commissioners. Item number 2 is another item that will require a public hearing, and it's the first reading on the rezoning from an R1, 1 and 2 family dwellings to P, public facilities, for Lot 19, Block 1 in the Wilds 20th edition. Mr. Sober.
Thank you again, Mr. President, Commissioners. Property here was erroneously zoned to R1. Should have been zoned P for public facilities. It's a lot that contains a trail. So tonight, I don't expect any comment from the public, as the public that is affected by this is all still owned by the developer. We've caught this before. Any of the lots have really been sold there. So I'd ask you hold a public hearing and consider approving the rezoning.
Thank you, Mr. Solberg. Before we go to a public hearing, is there any commissioners that has questions of Mr. Solberg? We'll close the regular agenda and move into the public hearing for the first reading of the rezoning from R1, 1 and 2 family dwellings to P, public facilities in Lot 19, Block 1 of the Wilds 20th Edition. Is there anyone from the public that would like to comment on this item? Is there anyone from the public that would like to comment on this item? Is there anyone from the public that would like to comment on this item? Hearing no one, we'll close the public hearing. Return to the regular agenda. Commissioners, additional questions, concerns?
I'll make the motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Olson. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Second.
Commissioner George seconds. It's been moved and seconded to rezoning from R1, 1 and 2 family dwellings to a public facilities for Lot 19, Block 1 in the Wilds 20th Edition. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Commissioners. Item number 3. Again, an item that requires a public hearing. It's a first reading on the Maple Ridge at the Preserve 7th Edition, a replat and rezoning from public facilities to PUD, a planned unit development. Mr. Sober.
Thank you again, Mr. President. Commissioners, tonight you'll recall Mr. and Mrs. Irish had approached the commission to take a small piece of property from the city. In so doing, they'll need to plat that piece of property and rezone the portion that they'll be taking in order to be able to build a house upon that lot as it's combined. So tonight, what we're proposing is the first reading, public hearing for the rezoning, which is required by law, and we'll bring the plat forward to you as soon as we get to the second reading, which will be at a later date and when we receive that plat. So tonight, public hearing is proposed for that rezoning. Planning Commission reviewed the application and is forwarding a recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Soberg. Is there any questions of Mr. Soberg before we move to the public hearing?
I do have a question, Mayor.
Please, Commissioner.
Okay, Tim, in that, if you pull up that screen where the plot is at and you have it blocked off, I see where their land is, and then I believe as of now that's still, well, that has to be the, I guess my question is this: how much of that square is where's the line in there?
So you're probably looking at the map that I put in of the existing lot. So I
believe so. I believe so.
The new plat is, I'm sharing that right now. I'm going to try to zoom in. You can see an overlay of the imagery and the new proposed lot lines.
Which is?
So they'll leave us with this piece over here, which would be Lot 2, Block 1, and they would get Lot 1, Block 1.
So it's, okay, so that square is still going to be ours then?
The small square, yeah, to access city utilities.
Right, that's where I was going with this. It looked like I didn't know how much they were purchasing.
Yeah.
Are there some little dash lines there, Tim, kind of where the old line was, about where your cursor is?
Some small little dotted line there. It shows where the current lot is.
And then the hard line is where it's going to be?
Yes, that's the proposed new lot.
Okay, so we still have plenty of space, is my point, right?
That is a question for Dustin and Matt and Vic, I'd say. But they've responded favorably on this, and we'll continue to review it.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we don't all of a sudden have no space to pull in there or whatever to turn around or to do our work when we have to do some work in there.
Yeah, we have adequate space. We have, at the most narrow, it's about 46 feet from property line, from the property line, from the sidewalk there.
Okay.
Additional questions for Mr. Sober? Hearing none, we'll close the regular agenda item and we'll go into a public hearing with regard to the first reading of the Maple Ridge of the Preserve 7th Edition, the replat and rezoning from public facilities to PUD planned unit development. Is there anybody from the public that would like to speak to this issue? Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak on this issue? Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak at this issue? Hearing none, I'm closing the public hearing and returning to the regular agenda. Commissioners, additional questions of Mr. Solberg or your thoughts?
I'd make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner George. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Simmons. Been moved and seconded to approve the first reading on the Maple Ridge at the Preserve and 7th Edition, the replat, the rezoning from public facilities to PUD. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Commissioners. Item number 4. Again, an item that requires a public hearing. This is the first reading on the zoning ordinance amendment to 4-448, provisions of home occupations to provide a sunset clause for conditionally permitted uses as they pertain to home occupations. Mr. Solberg.
Thank you again, Mr. President, Commissioners. Our Planning Commission recommended that we follow some similar language that we've used in conditional use permits in the past to when there is a home occupation considered as a conditional use, which is required for those home occupations that have non-resident employees coming to their place of business or where they have customers coming to the site, that if there is one granted, that it have a sunset clause. And so you'll see in your packet, I added a sunset clause as we write it in the use permit. It states any conditional use permit granted under this provision may be brought for review or revocation to the City Commission if rights to the property are sold, conveyed, or otherwise transferred, or if 4 or more complaints are received within 60 days. We did receive just an answer to that from our city attorney, and essentially states, John, correct me if I'm wrong, the only addition is that you added written complaints are received by the city within 60 calendar day period.
Correct.
So this is consistent with what we've written into all of our conditional use permits that are recorded against the property. Gives the ability for the city, if there is a concern, that we could revoke that conditional use permit if the property is sold or transferred. The reason that we require or wrote that it's an if and also had the complaints, because sometimes people actually make pretty substantial renovations to their homes for like a home salon or something of that nature. So they might actually want to sell it to somebody who also wants to do that same thing. If it's no problem, there doesn't appear to be a reason to bring it up for revocation or reconsideration unless we feel like there's an issue. So it gives us a little bit of leeway there, and it gives the homeowner a little bit of security in what they invest into their property. So anyway, a public hearing is scheduled tonight. Planning Commission has forwarded their recommendation, and I'm available for any questions, as I expect John is as well.
Thank you, Mr. Solberg. Questions for Mr. Solberg?
I just have one, Mayor.
Commissioner Wilson.
In your write-up of the ordinance, I didn't see where it said if 4 or more written complaints, so that would be updated to include the written complaint?
Yeah, I received that. I apologize. I received that after I put the packet together and didn't include it in yours. I noted it tonight as it being the first reading.
Okay.
So we still have a second reading ahead of us, and we'll have it corrected in that.
Thanks, Tim.
Additional questions for Mr. Solberg?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Regular meeting, move into a public hearing once again. Public hearing is being held for the first reading on the zoning ordinance amendment to 4-448, the provisions of home occupations to provide a sunset clause for conditionally permitted uses as they pertain to home occupations.
Mr. President, Sardis? Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt. I thought somebody had raised their hand to speak. I apologize. It's gone.
Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak to this item besides Melissa?
Sorry.
Is there anyone that would like to speak to this issue?
I was incorrect. I apologize.
That's no problem. Thank you for keeping us on our toes. Is there anyone that would like to speak to the item of the provisions of the first reading of the zoning ordinance amendment to 4-448, provisions of home occupations to provide a sunset clause for conditionally permitted uses as they pertain to home occupations? Anyone? Hearing none, the public hearing is closed. Go back to our regular agenda and regular meeting. Commissioners, are there any additional questions, concerns, thoughts?
I'll make the motion to approve the first reading.
Thank you, Commissioner Olson. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Jurdevich, it's been moved and seconded to approve the first reading of the zoning ordinance amendment to 4-448, provisions of home occupations. Is there any further discussion?
Just one, Mayor. I think Molly wanted to make that approval.
Have Molly state her name and address, please. Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Commissioners. Number 5 is the adopt a resolution for the issuance of refunding improvement bonds, Series 2020A, parameters resolution. Mr. Larson.
I'm our bond counsel and city attorney, Mr. Shockley, will actually introduce and kick this one off. Is that correct, John?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Shockley.
Thank you, Mr. Commission President, members of the West Fargo Commission. Pleased tonight to present a resolution to you regarding the sale of bonds today. We had originally anticipated we were going to have a parameters resolution being enacted by the City Council or City Commission. However, through the diligent efforts of Mike and Craig at Colliers, they were able to sell bonds today. The results were outstanding. So first and foremost, I'll just briefly go through what are we selling. We're selling a number of bonds for new money, being that that's funding projects that have already been constructed and projects that the city has to pay for now. So there's the new money portion. And we are also refunding a number, 2 old bonds. And what that means is we're refinancing those bonds to save interest costs. And so the bond is both new money and refunding. The overall net interest cost is 2.14, which is incredibly low. I don't remember a time in which the city has had refunding improvement bonds at that interest rate, but we are in a low interest rate environment right now. On the portion that we're refunding, we're saving about 9%, which anytime you get above 2 or 3% on a refunding issue, it starts to look attractive. So this is a lot of savings. That translates into a net present value savings of about $1.9 million, or an annual savings of about $140,000 per year in interest on the bonds that we're refunding. Craig and Mike from Colliers are here if you have some more detailed questions regarding the actual bond sale, but the results were outstanding and can certainly answer any questions the City Commission may have. Just as a kind of a baseline, when you think about interest rates, the state of North Dakota has a special program called SRF for certain projects that funds at 2%. And usually you have to go through a whole bunch of hoops and qualify for it. And that's sort of the basement of the lowest interest cost you'll get on long-term obligations. And so being at 2.14 is pretty incredible.
Thank you, Mr. Shockley. Mr. Larson, good work. Is there, Commissioners, any questions? Any questions of the agents that that sold the bonds?
Yes, I do, Mayor.
Please, Commissioner Simmons.
Thank you. I had muted for a minute there. Yeah, I just have a question, John or Mike. So because we're doing 2, we're doing new and old. And when we do the old ones, I'm just gonna assume that goes to those districts. And so does that go towards the end? No, it doesn't go as far as making their payments less. It just takes their due date and brings it closer, correct?
That is correct. So the city, technically all of the savings that are realized from the refunding go to those districts, but it pays them off sooner, so the assessments aren't out there as long.
So when we do that, how can we tell the people that? I just think, this is good news, and it's great news at that percentage. We've never had that before. How can we tell the people that this is going to, you're going to pay yours off quicker? Is there a way to, let people know this? Tina or Melissa or Mayor, anybody? I mean, how do we let them know that we are doing our job here, I guess?
Commissioner Simmons, that's a really good point. To date, we haven't ever really publicized it. We just talk about it at our commission meeting, and then if people call and ask, we let them know that any savings carries through and will end the term of the special assessment sooner. But we have no way of knowing how soon, because it depends on when we're able to call bonds and how much is sitting in the fund. So it's hard to pinpoint it, but at the end of the day, the decisions that were made and the financial status the city's in and the work that Colliers was able to do along with John and Jim and everybody has significantly helped these districts. But it's hard to put a finger on how quickly it would how much quicker they would be closed out. Just those that have these assessments, it is a savings for them, and they do get the full effect of the savings because it stays in their funds.
And I would imagine if we tried to, promote it, for lack of a better word, we'd probably end up getting more questions than we would have answers for, as far as, am I getting it, why am I not, so forth. I mean, it would just be nice. You guys are working so hard, and to get that rate's incredible. I've always looked at this, these bonds, you guys know that, and dang, that would be nice to tell people what we're doing here a little bit, but I do understand it's difficult.
Maybe John can explain, when we went through our Moody's ratings, Jim did an amazing job pulling all the documentation together along with Craig and Mike and John, and our rating actually was extremely strong. It was
A1, Tina.
A1 positive. It wasn't a negative outlook this time. It was A1. So we're in a really strong spot.
Yeah, and on top of that, long term, the city's debt load is going down long term. The city went through a significant growth where we had a large spike in debt, but now with the city's growth and some of the areas are filling in with that vertical development, that's helping, and it's overall, as we pay obligations off, your tax base is increasing and your debt load is decreasing, which are all positives for your rating. And I think Craig and Mike can attest that there's interest in the market in West Fargo bonds.
Is that something, we can at least promote or let people know, or would it just be more questions and so forth?
Why don't we ask Craig to speak to that? He was very involved in pricing this morning.
Sure. So I would say your bonds were very well received. The rating report was studied by the analyst, well received, and that's really what reflects in your cost of capital. It's interesting sometimes for community members to understand what that means to them. I've had residents come and say, well, we'd like to buy those bonds, but then when they see how low the interest rates are, they have other investment opportunities. So they sometimes are confused to say, well, hey, if I'm paying special assessments, if I buy the debt, I'm essentially getting a return on my investment. But they're not willing to go to the same levels that institutions, whether it be insurance companies, just money market funds, whether it be just true municipal funds, are willing to borrow at. So it's sort of it's a sector of the investment world that a lot of retail investors just don't fully understand, if that makes sense. But the institutions see what you're doing, they support the city, and they're very happy to have an opportunity to participate.
I think John's the only one who likes to buy them, don't you, John?
Well, I agree with Commissioner Simmons' statements that I think there could be some kind of generic, some kind of press release that we're doing these things in the best interest of the residents, and that there's no way possible that anybody can call up and ask Tina or Jim or anybody as to how that will actually impact them today, what maybe 20 years from now or 15 years from now. But it's still that we're working hard for them with our great partners, and that we're just not spending money, we're saving them money in this way, you know. So I think I have trust in Melissa. She can come up with something creative and get it so we don't incur a lot of additional questions, but just that we're doing something good. I like your statements there, Mark.
I would agree with both of Commissioner Olson and Commissioner Simmons. This is Melissa, and I think there's a story of really strategic, intentional decisions that have been made that help support the great work that team is doing. So I think I can work with Tina and figure out something that helps tell that story for sure. It is a complicated one, but it's a good one, and it's important to remember the work to provide the services and then the work to manage what that cost of services was in the end. So I think those are great comments.
Obviously good news, and when we're coming forward at the City Commission to adopt a resolution for the parameters, and then end up at the day of that, we're selling the bonds for at an interest rate of 2.14, a savings of 9%, total savings of $1.9 million over the term. So to Jim Larson, to Tina Fisk, to Mike, to Craig, to John Shockley, once again, it's a pleasure to have you folks keeping an eye on this and executing this, because it certainly is a great savings to the city of West Fargo. And I think there's one other thing to be noted, and I know that that's going to become a lot of discussion this next legislative session, and that is that when our bonds are paid, we do not continue to assess, regardless if the term was for 20 years and the term of the bond is satisfied within 16 years, the city of West Fargo does not continue to bill for that bond. We're only one of a very, very small handful of cities in the state of North Dakota that does it. So in addition to all this great news with regard to this bonds for these projects and the refinancing of a couple projects, we stand out, the city of West Fargo, on how we do our finances. And you should all be very proud of that. So, Commissioners, what's your pleasure on item number 5 with regard to the issuance of refunding improvement bonds, Series 2020A?
Make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Simmons. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Jurdovig seconds. Been moved and seconded to adopt the resolution for the issuance of refunding improvement bonds, Series 2020A, as they were sold today, with all of the parameters that outlined by Mr. Larson and Mr. Shockley. Is there any further discussion?
President Dardis.
Yes, Mr.
Mike
Manstrom.
As always, I'd just like to take a moment to thank yourself and the commissioners and City of West Fargo for the opportunity Colliers has to work for the city. You're a growing city. I'm sure we'll be back, and we look forward to working with you in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Manstrom. We thank you and your firm for all the good work you do for us, too. I think there's one point that I certainly missed, and maybe some of the rest of us did, too. When you visit with Craig or Mr. Manstrom with regard to issuing these finance bonds like this, or Mr. Shockley, part of the reason is that the bond market finds our city and our bonds very, very attractive. That's because of the cash reserves that our city maintains, and the way that we're operating, some of the accolades that we're getting for the best city, safest city, all of those types of things. So this, we talk about our finance people and our finance directives of keeping an eye on this particular element of what we do, but it's much broader than that. All of our department heads, all of our city employees, my fellow commissioners that are involved in this, and of course the taxpayers that continue to reach out to us and offer suggestions and voice their concerns. So the city of West Fargo is, besides all of its rapid growth, we've maintained a good, solid financial footing, and we should all be very proud of that. Item number 6 is approval of a proposed forestry and vector fees. Mr. Larson.
Did we vote on that?
See, you guys got to keep me accountable. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's what happens when I get on a soapbox. I apologize.
Well, he's keeping us on our toes here.
All right. Just wanted to see if you guys are paying attention or watching TV.
There you go.
Item number 6 is the approval of forestry and vector fees. Mr. Larson.
Thank you, Commission President and Commissioners. This is an item that originally was discussed as a part of the 2021 budget. As we reviewed our needs for the vector and the forestry area, we found that both were underfunded due to the fee that is currently charged. Right now, our fee is 50 cents per month per account for vector and the same amount for our forestry. The discussion and the amount that was recommended at the time of our budget approval was to move forestry up to $2 per month per account and move vector from 50 cents up to $1. Just quick history, I did look back today to see when was the last time that basically when the 50 cent per month per account was implemented, and it goes to prior to 2003. I don't know if someone has additional information as when we actually started that, but that's looking at historical. So it has been in place for a long time. The fees, for the most part, have funded the needs of vector and forestry, but we're finding the vector fees are going up as we take a look at the cost of spraying, cost of chemicals, and sometimes the number of treatments we have to do. And then for forestry, as a part of the 2020 budget, we realized that we were underfunded that year. We did bring some transfer from the tree fund, but we need to bring this up to meet the current needs for the services that we are offering in the city of West Fargo. Our city attorney, John Shockley, has drafted a resolution to set the rates, and that is included in your packet. We've also included in there to what the monthly increase is for a home. We included the combined so that you can see the total impact of the two fees. So together, it will increase a homeowner's fee or utility accounts fee by $2 a month or $24 per year. Be glad to respond to any questions.
Questions for Mr. Larson?
I would have just one quick question.
Please, Commissioner.
Jim, what are the fees that either commercial businesses or apartment complexes pay in relation to this?
I might have to defer that to our city administrator. I don't have how they're applied to the larger commercial accounts.
Okay. Thank you, Jim. That's a really valid question. What we do when it comes to these type of fees, we bill per unit. So if you have 100 apartment units, you get 100 charges. One commercial unit, we don't charge more for commercial on this than we do residential. It's just per unit. Does that help answer your question?
Yeah, I think that is sufficient.
Thank you.
Additional questions?
I have a question.
Please. Commissioner Clark.
So, based on, we've had multiple increases this year. We've had the water and sewer increase. We just, a lot of people are going to be paying the sump pump, and with everything that's going on with COVID, now you can look at the financial dashboard that Jim has provided and see that, yes, those two areas are operating in a deficit, but would it be considered absolutely critical or absolutely essential that the rates went up now versus waiting until we're past our pandemic?
you want me to respond to that, Mr. Larson?
Please do.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner George. I understand exactly what you're saying. The vector fee actually, the vector fee and the forestry fee, yes, they have been underfunded for an extremely long time. The only reason we bring this forward to start January 1 is because it was part of the budget that was approved and this rate was approved with it. Now, you as commissioners can change that start date to whenever you feel it's a comfortable time to start. But just know that the rates that we have here don't give excess funds to these at the end of the year. In one case, it makes it about equal, and in the other case, it's almost still a little bit less. We're trying to keep this as minimal as we can, but that definitely is a commission decision that you guys can make.
I guess, Mayor Tina, my thought would be, it would be nice to, because I do agree with Commissioner George, that if we could tier this a little bit so it's not quite so much, because it looks like it's going to be quite a jump on your monthly bill again, correct?
It will add another $1.50. Yes, Commissioner Simmons, to your monthly.
That's it for $1.50 for the monthly increase. Okay.
Correct. Yep. It will add 50 cents to vector control and $1.50 to forestry.
Is there any way we could push it back 6 months and say maybe we'd be reasonably assured if we get a vaccine out this winter, this spring, that hopefully more people will be back to work, businesses will be doing better. Is that a compromise, or I guess I'm not sure how other people feel on this.
Commissioners, I want to correct myself. I'm sorry. It's going up a total of $2 if I would look at the numbers correctly. So you were right. So $2 a month.
One of the things since most of this commission was elected, 3 out of us, we did an analysis on all of the enterprise funds, on all of the revenues that we had coming in for services provided directly to the taxpayers. As you've pointed out, Commissioner George, whether it was water, whether it was sewer, vector control, forestry, everything. And we found a consistent pattern where the commission, previous commissions had been very, very conservative on passing on increases to the public. But when we have those negative balances in each of these enterprise funds, that means that we have to appropriate, or we have to take other dollars that we could be placing towards lowering special assessments, buying down major projects. And so, it's kind of a shell game, quite honestly, Commissioner George. If we were to move it back 6 months, certainly that's a consideration. We could do that. But when we've been pressing the staff to do the analytics of what things actually cost us for those services to provide, and they've been doing great work and providing us great information on that. So now we have the data in front of us that we're falling short in these areas. Because if we have to take state aid funds or sales tax funds to try and augment some of the expense of special assessments that go into the public, that's just less dollars. So I've been trying to strive to get us to the point that we understand what our costs are, at least so we're not running in negative balances. We don't need to make a lot of money in these enterprise funds. We have neighbors to the east of us that transfer millions of dollars because of what they're charging for some of their enterprise funds to other areas. I don't ever want us to get there. But we need to know the facts of what our real costs are. And so the commission, obviously, it's in your power to do what you'd like, but that's the reason why. We've been pushing for the good data, understanding our costs, so we aren't augmenting other departments to pay for another one. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I just felt like if we're raising rates in the public, it at least deserves some discussion.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more, Commissioner. It's a good dialogue to have. Absolutely.
I guess, Mayor, Yeah, my opinion is I think you're right. The $2 isn't gonna, you know, whether we do it now or 6 months, I don't know how much that's gonna make a difference. I know this is already said and done, but I was more concerned actually with our sewer. That's the one that still concerns me. And I'd like to have, you know, more discussions down the road. But I'm okay with this, I guess.
You know, the concern is that we be careful what we ask for, because we've asked for very definitive data with regard to what the services cost for, again, all of these different departments. And now that we have it, then what do we deal with? How do we deal with it? Because they've been running in a negative balance, and we've been having to supplement those departments with additional dollars that could be used as better intended, if that's a good word. So every time that we've discovered this, I hate it. I hate the fact that we have to give consideration to either raising the rates or, again, continuing to supplement these departments. So be careful what you ask for. You might not get the answer that you want, and that's kind of what we found. But the staff has done a wonderful job in their analytics of getting us to this point. Any additional questions of Mrs. Fisk or anyone else?
I would make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Simmons. Is there a second, please?
I'll second it.
Commissioner Olson seconds. Have been moved and seconded to approve the proposed forestry and vector fee increase. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Commissioners. Item number 7 is ordinance number 1164. It pertains to child care facilities. Mr. Grant Larson of Cass Fargo Public Health.
Yeah, good evening, Mayor and West Fargo City Commission. Thank you for having me on tonight. Like the Mayor said, Grant Larson, Director of Environmental Health for Fargo Cass Public Health. I've got 4 agenda items, 7, 8, and 9, and 10 in front of you. Basically, what I've been working with Tina, and in order to make sure that our ordinances in Fargo mirror yours in West Fargo as far as the health department, because we represent you as a health department, specifically environmental health. And in these 4 programs, child care facility, food service, body art, and aquatic facilities, which are your pools. So I saw a need, since we've updated some of our ordinances on our side, we worked with Onstead Twitchell to just make sure they mirror each other in order to provide consistent regulation between both Fargo and West Fargo within our programs.
Thank you, Mr. Larson. Is there any questions of Mr. Larson? Commissioners, are these, Mr. Shockley, Mrs. Fisk, are these actionable items that we have to approve these ordinances? Or do we have to have public hearings?
Mr. Commission President, these ordinances do not require a public hearing, but they do require a first and second reading. So tonight's action would be to have a first reading for each of the ordinances.
Okay. Item number 1 is 1164, child care facilities. We do have to. We have to have a public hearing if we're having a first reading, do we not, John?
No, Mr. Commission President. Public hearings are typically only for zoning types of ordinances. This is just a standard public health ordinance. Therefore, only the first and second reading would be required, and you could, in theory, have one motion to approve the first reading for all 3 ordinances, or you could take them separately if you'd like.
What's your pleasure, Commissioners?
I think in the past we've taken them as 3, John, in a case like this. So if that's the case, I would make a motion to approve all 3 of them.
All 4?
4, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Okay, we have a motion to approve ordinance number 1164, 1165, 1166, 1167 as amended by the work of Onstead Twitchell and Fargo Cass Public Health under the direction of Mr. Grant Larson. Is there any further discussion? We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Jurdevig. Been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion?
There is one member of the public with their hand raised to make comments, if you would accept it.
Thank you, Ms. Richard. We'll take that comment now.
Go ahead, Nicole.
Thanks, Melissa. This is Nicole Dutton with Thunder Coffee in West Fargo. Thanks for taking my question. I just wanted to understand what the difference is between the Fargo ordinances and what West Fargo has been following, being that our business falls within that one that would be affected.
Thank you, Nicole. Mr. Shockley, would you address that question, please?
I think the changes that are being made are set forth in the agenda. Perhaps Mr. Larson could probably be a little bit more helpful in providing a higher level. I'm guessing it would be more with respect to food establishments than it would be with respect to the 4 other ordinances, because I don't believe that the aquatic facilities, body art, or childcare facilities would apply to Thunder Coffee. So,
all right, Mr. Larson, could you address the changes that have taken place in 1165 food establishments?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. And you're absolutely right, John, that when we look at specifically, I believe her name was Nicole, and your question regarding food service, actually out of the 4, that was the least amount of revisions that Onstead Twitchell did. And to answer your question, whether you're in Fargo, your facility in Fargo and West Fargo, they're going to have the same exact license fees and regulations based on the FDA food code that we adopt through a memorandum of understanding through the North Dakota State Health Department. So all of your food code and your license fees associated with your business are exactly the same between Fargo and West Fargo, and that's what we're trying to make as a seamless and efficient way to do business for both the regulations and the fees. And that's why we work really well together between Fargo and West Fargo, both commissions.
Great. Thanks so much for entertaining my question.
Thank you, Nicole. Are there any additional questions or concerns that we need to address? We have a motion on the floor. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Moving on to item 11. Discuss the long-term use of public engagement resources and equipment, including virtual meeting technology. Ms. Richard.
Thank you, Commissioners. We wanted to take this opportunity to start talking about post-pandemic and what resources we'll be making available. So obviously, when we transitioned to not having meetings in person, we implemented Zoom and have been offering those virtual meeting options. And when we even went back into the commission chambers for meetings for a brief period of time, we were still offering those virtual meeting options. It's been a great platform for advocating for public engagement and participation. We've heard other public entities already commit to continuing this when we get back into levels that will facilitate in-person meetings. So, for instance, the North Dakota State Legislature has talked about continuing those opportunities. And so we thought it's a policy decision to talk about what those offerings will look like. There's some technology implications that go along with that, and making sure that we're offering the best mix of technology both within the commission chambers and also with the virtual video conference opportunity. And so we wanted to open it up for a discussion for you to talk about what your opinions are on continuing that virtual meeting opportunities and allowing staff to investigate it further to come up with a good plan that really makes it a really good public engagement strategy.
Thank you, Mrs. Richard. There was a discussion took place last week with regard to this. There's been a lot of data that's come out and surveys by cities, businesses, and the like. And the overall conclusion is that the virtual meetings and these platforms are going to continue for an extended period of time. The fact that the vaccine is supposedly right around the corner is not going to stop people from being very, very vigilant, if you will, on some of the public gatherings. So my comment to Mrs. Richard is that with the technology that we have in place at the present time, we've had some issues. We've had, obviously, audio has been one of the things that I've struggled with at times. And so when we were going to talk about how we're going to continue to process and administer, staff these virtual meetings, I thought that there was a bigger question that needed to take place. And obviously, my skill set doesn't lend itself to this particular discussion. Commissioner Jurdevig very generously has volunteered because of his technical background and software background and all of that to be a part of that discussion with Mrs. Richard, as well as Tina Fisk, and Melissa will coordinate with IT and the specific department heads that are critical that they have a lot of these type of meetings, the police department, the fire department, all of those. So that's how this came to the agenda as an item, is that do a complete review of what we have as offerings presently, whether it's the platforms, the hardware, the software, whatever, because I think that this type of virtual communication with our public is going to continue to go on for an extended period of time, and we owe it to our public to present that to them as efficiently as we can and without any failures. So, Mrs. Richard, I give it back to you. That's why it's on the agenda.
Absolutely. And then one other component of this that I failed to mention in our intro as well is that there's some accessibility and ADA components that I think we still need to work on to offer in terms of closed captioning and just making sure that it's a experience that works for all of our residents. So again, I think as staff, we just want to find out what your opinions are on the policy of continuing this, and then to have permission to take a look at the full offering and understand what that really looks like in terms of technologies, or if there's any kind of changes that would need to be made.
What we were looking here for this evening is to make the commission aware that we're initiating this type of discussion, I think, out of necessity, both presently and for the future. And I just wanted everybody to be aware that we're having that type of discussion, so nobody is, surprised. Do you have anything other than that, Mrs. Richard, as far as at this time, or are we just going to, I guess, again, we could poll the commissioners and ask them what your thoughts are, if in fact, this COVID situation starts to, get better, or we want to go to strictly just to in-person meetings. But I think our public is going to demand that they're going to be a little more cautious. So, commissioners, your thoughts, please.
I would support like a hybrid option, like you're discussing, where you have the choice to be in person or virtual. I know a lot of people prefer to have discussions in person. I know I do, and I know I've had people from the public say they feel a lot more accessible if they have the option to be in there. But then I also understand people with health concerns where a virtual option would be better. So I would definitely support that.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner George.
I've got a comment. I guess I'd have to know what the monthly or annual cost of having all these different types of options available for us and the public. And where is that money going to come from? You know, we didn't budget for this pandemic to hold our meetings like this, so we're going to have to figure out where that's coming from and how we're going to pay for that and where that fits. If it's under an IT budget, or are we going to pull it from somewhere? You know, again, robbing Peter to pay Paul for this. You know, if we have to, we have to. But I guess we need to know those costs along with the other things that this group is finding.
Exactly what the dialogue is about, Commissioner Olson. You bet. Thank you.
I have one question, Mayor. Melissa, are we paying for these Zooms right now? I know I looked it up a little bit, and some are free and some aren't, and it just depends on how long we go and so forth, but how's that working?
To provide the option to have the meeting set up where we have panelists that can come in and share their screen and be allowed to talk freely. You guys are panelists right now versus attendees, who are the public and that we let in and out when it's time to make comments. That does come at a cost. There's some additional cost too if we want to look seriously at like a closed captioning option and some of those things. So they're all things that we need to look at for sure. But it's not a huge cost, but it is a cost that was unexpected and that we're carrying. And so that is happening. And we would expect that there's many different video conference options out there, but they'll all have some sort of a cost when we're trying to have a really well coordinated meeting that we can help facilitate public comment in an organized manner.
Okay, and I agree, Mayor. I agree with Commissioner George all the way. I do like the hybrid. We just need to find the money, but I think that makes it safe for everybody. You get a choice, and I like that. I like that choice, Commissioner George. So thank you for bringing that up.
And I would simply add that once the pandemic is over, I think it's still just an accessibility question. I mean, I think providing an option for the public, or if one of us is physically out of town, and you know, having the tools so that we can get together, whether we're all in the chambers or not, works really well.
I think a couple of us are thinking Arizona here, so.
Well, I was actually thinking of Commissioner George. You know, she flies around and does stuff, so I figured, you know.
Thank you.
I travel for work a lot, so.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up too, Commissioner Jurdovic, because I do think we also always struggle with what's the best time to have a public meeting when we have these public input meetings and things, and trying to adjust to schedules and making sure that we're offering opportunities where if you're running from work to home and making those decisions. And so continuing to offer these opportunities, I think will just help in that participation in those types of things as well.
Mr. Commission President, one issue from a legal standpoint, once the governor's emergency order is over, to have an electronic meeting, at least one commission member will need to be in the commission chambers in order to have an electronic meeting. The governor's order allows us to dispense with that requirement under North Dakota law. So you want whatever technology is determined to be used, want to make sure that it functions within the council or the commission chambers so that it's easy to use. I know early on we had some issues with connectivity in the commission chambers.
Thank you, Mr. Shockley. Point well taken.
One comment on that line of thinking there, John. How does that work for people who want to participate in the meeting from the public? Do they can they do it electronically, or do they have to be there in person?
Well, it depends. So it really depends upon how the city commission wants to set it up going forward in the future with respect to public notices. Historically, public notices required a person to attend a city commission meeting or a city council meeting and present in person. If the city commission wants to make that option available for people to attend electronically, we just need to alter our public hearing notices so that they would have notice that they can participate through an electronic means. And we'd also want to make sure that the electronic means are functionally equivalent to attending in person. So for example, if somebody was protesting a special assessment, they would have the same ability to address the commission as someone in person. So it's more of a making sure the technology works efficiently in the commission chambers.
I didn't know if there's something in the Century Code that would prohibit that based on the governor's declaration under this emergency, so.
No.
Okay, thank you.
So, Mrs. Richard,
I think,
please continue.
I was going to say, a very valuable discussion, and it sounds like we have support to begin to look at what that long-term piece looks like and making sure that we have everything set up to function as best as possible with an eye towards what that would cost and where it's coming from, and then can come back to you with some options. And this will definitely be a multi-department effort. There's pieces all over the board that go into getting these together, and so I would certainly expect that to continue as well.
All right. And keeping in the back of your mind legal as well.
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much, Mrs. Richard.
Thank you.
Item number 12 is the accept the developer's petition and create sewer, water, storm, and street improvement district for 1315.2. Mr. Scott.
Thank you and good evening, Commissioner President Dartis and other members of the Commission. On your agenda packet, you have documents relating to a petition from Mr. Jason Hyde of ICO Homes to continue development within the Westview 3rd Edition. I'm going to share my screen here. And please confirm that you can see what's on the screen.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. What you see here are the petition documents, as well as title opinion, proof of ownership of the property, and then here is the map. We are proposing to create a special assessment district in the red boundary here, as you can see on the map. Basically just about 18 residential lots, and it would be the final phase of this Westview development that began about 5-6 years ago. And so tonight we're just asking the Commission to accept the petition and create sewer, water, street, and storm improvement district 1315.2. With that, I would answer any questions.
Questions for Mr. Scott?
If there are none, I'd make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Simmons. Is there a second to accept the developer's petition and create a sewer, water, storm, and street improvement district for 1315-2? Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Jurdovic seconds. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? The motion is to accept the petition and create a sewer, water, storm, and sewer improvement district for 1315-2 from ICO Homes. No more discussion. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carried. 4-1 vote. Item 13 is to authorize the mayor to sign letters of support for the North Dakota DOT grant application. Mr. Scott.
Thank you once again, Commissioner President Dartis and members of the Commission. What you have in your packet are proposed applications for 5 improvement projects. 2 of them to apply for funding underneath the state's Urban Roads and Regional Roads program for funding in the fiscal year of 2025. Those projects include 9th Street Northeast from Main Avenue to 12th Avenue. That was recently identified within a corridor study that was completed here this last spring. The other project being Cheyenne Street from 40th Avenue down to 52nd Avenue. That is a project that we've applied for the past couple years. It would complete our urbanization of Cheyenne Street all the way down to our city limits at 52nd Avenue. Then there are 3 other projects underneath the state's Transportation Alternatives program. 2 of these projects were identified in the MetroCog's bikeway gap analysis. So it was a study that was done last year. The first one being a new path connecting the Shields Soccer Complex. I'm going to go through the maps here. This one. So this would be a proposed path that would connect basically the Shields Soccer Complex area over to the north side of Elmwood Park. And the second path that was identified in that study essentially connects a park in the Eaglewood subdivision over to the Lights at 32 development. So those are 2 bike path projects, and then there is a third project that we are wanting to apply for underneath the Transportation Alternative Grant, which is a pedestrian safety improvement type project where we would go through and make some modifications at our signalized intersections along the 9th Street and Veterans Boulevard corridor, really promoting pedestrian safety and improving some efficiencies at those intersections. This improvement was identified in an ongoing study that we currently have with KLJ that began earlier this year. And so, again, really what we're looking for from the commission tonight is to approve these applications and authorize the commission president to sign letters of support. And I would say, or want to mention that we will be getting, or hoping to get letters of support from both the West Fargo Park District as well as the West Fargo School District, as these are projects that they would certainly be interested in as well. If awarded, if we move forward with these applications and we are selected for one of these projects, they do come with a local share. The 2 projects underneath the Urban Regional Roads Program, as you saw, that is planned for the fiscal year 2025. Our local share would be determined at that time based on what eligible funding the state has into that program. And traditionally, underneath the Transportation Alternatives Program, funding is 80% up to a cap of around $250,000. We do have a project in the mix right now, our Drain 45 bike path, where we have 2 phases that were recently funded through that program, and one phase was awarded a $232,000 grant, and the other phase a $292,000 grant. So it does vary a little bit, but predominantly in that ballpark. So the remaining cost would be a city share that we would certainly need to determine if and when we want to accept a grant. So again, at this point, we're sending in applications to receive grant funding under two different programs here. So with that, I would answer any questions.
Questions for Mr. Scott?
I have one question there, Mayor.
Mr. Olson.
We went through the Drain 45 process this past year, and I know these are out 2 to 3 fiscal years from now, but I just want to make sure the public may understand, or at least we understand, that there's possibly no way to know how much it's going to actually cost to put any of these bike paths in or safety enhancements on that alternative program, or what the cost would be for Cheyenne Street from 40th down to 52nd, and 9th Street from Main to 12th Avenue is there.
That's a great question, Commissioner Olson. We certainly provide a very rough, high-level cost estimate, but yes, without much engineering effort or investigations into the project, it's difficult to say with any degree of certainty what these costs will end up being. I will say that 4 of these, all of them except for that pedestrian safety project on Veterans Boulevard, the other 4 were in our capital improvement plan that was adopted back in June. But again, They are just high-level cost estimates at this point, and until we get into engineering work, we certainly won't have much more than a high-level cost to rely upon.
We really can't get the cart before the horse and figure out how much money it's going to cost us at this point. I guess that's the point I want to make, that there's no way we can make an educated guess that's going to come close to what it could cost, because the cost of concrete and construction could greatly change between now and then.
Absolutely, absolutely, and the other moving target, especially with the Urban Regional Roads Program, is the amount of funding available come that fiscal year. And so, for example, the Cheyenne Street project that we just finished up on the south side of town, you know, it's the same program, and again, that's an 80% funding eligibility program. However, based on the amount of dollars that were available for the state to release, I believe our project really only got, you know, around 20%, and don't hold me to that number, but it was pretty much the opposite. We got a roughly just shy of $11 million between those 2 miles of construction, and our total project was, you know, roughly $50 million. So yeah, that's the other moving target. So it's really difficult to say not only how much will they cost, but what exactly would our local share be.
So the commission that's in place in those fiscal years will have a tough decision to make, just like we had on Drain 45.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Dustin.
Additional questions for Mr. Scott? This is an actionable item. The vote whether or not you authorize myself to sign the letters of support for these North Dakota DOT grant applications.
I'll make
a motion to approve. Oh,
Thank you, Commissioner George. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Olson seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the authorization of the mayor to sign letters of support to the North Dakota DOT grant applications. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Commissioners. Item number 14 is to award a contract for the Improvement District number 3003, North Dakota DOT PCN 22277. Mr. Scott.
Thank you once again, Commissioner President Dardis and members of the Commission. So before you, in the agenda packet, is a pretty detailed report regarding the bid results for our downtown Cheyenne Street reconstruction project. I don't want to read through all of this word for word, so I'm going to do my best to summarize it and then go through some of the materials that are in the packet. But essentially, there was the DOT held a virtual bid opening on November 13th, where we had 4 local contractors submit bids. Bids ranged roughly from $7.5 to $8.5 million. Dakota Underground was the apparent low bidder. The other bidders were Northern Improvement, KPH, and Stratacorp. Again, all 4 local contractors. Unfortunately, we did have a pretty significant discrepancy between the bids and where the engineering estimates were. And the long story of that, the short version of that would be that our engineering estimates were just undervalued, primarily because of the complex nature of the project, and just didn't account for certain factors there that certainly the contracting market did account for in their bids. And so one way I wanted to report this out in your agenda was that these bids are not bad or high, but again, there's just a discrepancy from where the engineers were estimating. And when I say the engineers, I'm saying myself, my staff, and then of course More Engineering is our consultant, where we were forecasting the project to cost. We were low. So I just want to make that very clear that these aren't bad bids. We have, over the last couple of weeks, we did go through and extensively analyzed the bids. There's over 150 bid items, and we went through line item by line item. Moore Engineering also had a meeting with the contractor to understand where some of the discrepancies fell. We have at least a rough understanding that certain things like the constructability, the phasing, the timing, the scheduling, and inherently just the complexity of working in a downtown environment. Those, again, were just items that we didn't quite reflect right in our engineering estimates. There was also an internal group of city staff, including myself, Jim, Lauren, Tim, and Tina, who has worked together over the last couple weeks to not only review the bids, but also go through the other project details and just, ascertain what options there are, kind of guide through where we want to move forward and how to move forward. The same group was also able to meet with some commissioners one-on-one last week and answer some questions through that process. Our finance director, Jim Larson, was able to put together a source and use of funds schedule, which again is included in this packet. Our economic director, Lauren Orchard, was able to reach out to some of the business owners downtown, specifically with the DBA, and I believe Representative Nicole Dutton is also attending the meeting today and might have a couple comments regarding the project and how to move forward. The results were reviewed at the review committee last week, which there was a unanimous vote to recommend awarding a contract. So if we do move forward and award a contract, of course, that would put us in position to begin construction this spring with an anticipated completion date of next fall. Now, moving on from the summary, there are quite a bit of attachments here. The first being a letter from Moore Engineering where they've outlined and summarized where they think some of the contributing factors, the discrepancy between our engineering estimates and the bids. From there is also correspondence from the DOT where they have the abstract of bids. So here is exactly from that virtual bid opening held on November 13th, the item by item results. After the bid abstract is a relatively busy spreadsheet titled Bid Price Analysis. This is the report here that shows item by item the differences between the engineering estimates. You can see here in the white columns, there are our estimates, and the colored columns to the right are the bids submitted by each contractor: Dakota Underground, Northern Improvement, KPH, and Stratacorp. Now I want to get here and pause for a second on this source and use of funds sheet. This is what our finance director put together, and I'd like to give him an opportunity to just summarize the source and use of funds, if he could jump on.
I sure can. Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So in working with our city engineer and others, we took a look at kind of the phases that this particular project has taken. There was the original probable opinion of cost, which was brought forward in June. There's the engineer's estimate that was updated in September. And then we have the engineer's statement of estimated cost. We're trying to really show the full progression of where we've been and changes that we've had to make as we've moved along in it. I'm not going to speak a lot to the use of funds that's at the bottom. That is something that's more of the engineering. but it does include all the costs of this project. So on the top, right now we're looking at a number of different sources to fund this project. The first is the capital sales tax. That's a sales tax that comes in the 1.5% each year, specifically to be used for projects of this nature. It's moved up about $400,000 from the time it originally came forward in June. So it's not had a large increase. The water revenue bond and the sewer bonds are going to be used to fund this because while we have $1.82 million of expense here that is going to be special assessed, we have additional costs for the water and sewer. And so we are bringing funds from those utility funds, and the significance of that, those are part of what has already been built into the rates that were approved back in December of 2019. I'm going to skip across. I'm going to hit the special assessment that Dustin has highlighted there. So originally, it was presented that we would have $1.822 million in assessments. We have not changed that. We have continued to stay at that level. We've tried to stay to that commitment of what the cost would be to the properties benefiting. The economic development sales tax, we've identified $1.2 million there. This is based on covering up some expenses that would be the streetscape items, and also to help phase this project so it does not encumber or minimizes the encumbrance to the businesses that are surrounding the construction. Our goal is not to shut those businesses down, but to allow them to continue to have business through the course of the project. The $2.377 million is from the DOT, North Dakota Department of Transportation. That too is a consistent amount. That has not changed, as that is all they will provide. We've also, good news, we've been provided that we will be receiving some prairie dog funds, which is excellent. The first bucket did fill, or it will fill here in December. That should be a distribution of approximately $2.5 million, and we are recommending to use $1 million of those funds towards this project. Again, our goal is to stabilize the special assessments and not bring them up. Though the project costs did go up, we're working to keep them consistent, the assessment component. So I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have.
I have one question for you, Jim. What part of the project is actually being special assessed? When it originally came out, we were just going to do the road diet and not touch the infrastructure, but since the studies on the core area infrastructure, brought to light how bad and aged our infrastructure is. So just what exactly are we special assessing? Is it part of the whole construction, or is it just bits and pieces of it?
Dustin, I think you might be able to respond to that question better.
Dustin, I can reply as well too, because if you remember as commissioners quite a while back, you had us take out the street portion of it, and that is what added more some of our other sales tax and other issues, so that's not in the assessment. And also, when this was initially started, we were under the impression from those that we were getting information from that the sewer lines and so on and so forth underneath were fine and would not need to be redone, and we found out at a later date, much later date, that yes, they actually were needing to be redone based on the core area infrastructure study that was done by AE2F. Now let Dustin talk from there.
Thank you. So I hope you can see on the screen here, I scrolled down to the bottom. There's roughly, there's over a dozen sheets relating to our preliminary assessment evaluation. As you can see at the bottom, we identify some preliminary funding. It's more of a high level based on what Jim had put together in that previous sheet we were looking at. So as you can see here, we're going to fund the project at $1.8 million of assessments. Underneath that are the different categories of work that we are separating out And so water, sanitary sewer, storm sewer are the components of this job that we are going to allocate assessments. So as was just mentioned, we are not special assessing any portion of the street-related work, only the sewer, water, and the storm sewer. And what I've also included in the packet is, again, these are very high-level and preliminary documents, but this is a preliminary benefit map that would show those three utilities how we have at this point drawn the benefiting boundaries. And so we have a blue boundary here where the properties within that boundary would be receiving an assessment for the water main work. We have a red boundary, and those are the properties at this point that we are proposing would receive an assessment for storm sewer work. Then there is a green boundary starting at Cheyenne Street here and pretty much the properties to the west of Cheyenne Street that are going to benefit from the sanitary sewer work that we have. So again, the street portion is no longer included in the assessment. Back in June, when we did review the engineering report, we had a similar document and preliminary assessment sheets in there. At the time, we did have a street assessment factored in. So again, I just want to point out that at this point in time, we are not special assessing any of that street work.
Mayor, I have a couple things.
Please, Commissioner George.
Okay, so I put a ton of thought into this particular item, and I have mixed feelings on it. I have some concerns. Of course, the 1.8 million special assessment is my number one concern, and so I made some phone calls to see how the local smaller businesses felt on that. I had one person who was supportive of it because he felt that it would really add value to the community, even though he didn't like the special. He thought it was necessary. I had another business owner. A couple of the concerns he expressed was one that Tina already addressed in a question was, does this infrastructure, water, sewer, storm, does it truly need to be done because it's aging, or is it more for the benefit of some of the larger structures that are in the area now? And it sounds like that it truly is aging, necessary, needs to be done, so that's good to confirm that. The other question is, in regards to the special assessment, how fairly will that be allocated? The one business owner I talked, well, both of them were smaller businesses versus, we'll say, the Epic buildings, which are much larger, and are those allocations of the special assessment, how fair are they going to be? If the specials are going to be fair, then they're okay with it moving forward, but how to get those where they feel that they're fair. I did call a member of the special assessment committee and asked him about the allocations of specials, and the way that special assessment process is currently done, it almost didn't sound like that would necessarily be the case, so there might be some issues on how that special is allocated. So I don't know if Mr. Shockley could address something about if, how to make sure that the businesses that use more water and use more sewer, is there any way to take that into an account? The other thing I'm wondering is, as far as the residents go, how many of the residents are actually aware that this special assessment's coming? The businesses, I think, do, but the residents at this point, they're each going to be receiving around a $2,000 special assessment for this. And how many of them truly know that? Has there been any people that have raised concerns about this? The other thing I'm learning, so from this process, is if you want to protest your special, you can do that, but it's after the process is done, and there's not, the project has to be paid for. We're in the stages where this hasn't been done, it doesn't have to be paid for yet. So how well have the residents been informed that this is coming? And if too many people are unhappy with this, this seems to be the point to stop it now versus in the future. Not that we want to stop it, but I'm just saying if there was a huge protest. So I'm just wondering about those issues.
Thank you, Commissioner George. Dustin, with Tina, you want to address maybe the first item with regard to larger facilities paying more than the special assessments, and special assessments and the smaller people?
I'll start, and I know Dustin will jump in and give you a lot more detailed engineering type comments, but the project itself, different parts of it, the water, sewer, storm, each one is based on different things like square footage, front footage, all those types of things. So those people with the larger footprints are going to carry a larger weight on certain portions than others. Dustin can get into I'm thinking of like storm, like water, sewer. He can explain to you how that's allocated. I think one super important thing to remember is what Commissioner George said at the very beginning was these underlying water, sewer, and storm issues, they aren't going away. They have to be done. And so if we can wrap it into this grant and keep it at $1.8 million for special assessments, that is about the best scenario we can hope for, because it's only going to get worse and more expensive. I know Lauren hasn't had a chance to talk yet, but she can talk about some of the comments that she heard from DBA and some of the other places. But the special assessments will be, Dustin has a draft of what is being looked at, but it hasn't gone through special assessment committee yet because it's too soon. And he knows the different parameters that we use for allocation of special assessments. But in my mind, I think it's important to understand that we always strive to be extremely fair. We don't overburden one area for another, but yet we understand the importance of the residential property and the commercial property and the big difference that there is between the two. So I'll let Dustin talk more about the details on that question.
Well, thanks, Tina. I do want to just again caution that these are certainly preliminary numbers, and the allocation of the benefit and spreading the assessments is really a component of the Special Assessment Commission. And yes, traditionally, that doesn't take place until the end of a project after the City Commission, by resolution, directs the Special Assessment Commission to convene and spread the assessments based on the dollar amount the City Commission establishes. And however, we do, in the effort of certainly transparency and for financial planning, generally after we've awarded a construction contract, we go through at least a preliminary iteration of assessments so that we can publish something into our website and tax software that allows residents to see what at least is anticipated. But again, this is a unique project, and so things like, our traditional way of assessing out on a square foot, in this scenario, there might be some unique challenges or reasons for us to deviate from that and to account for things like high density development. And those are some things, again, that need to go before the Special Assessment Commission, and maybe there is an opportunity to try to convene them from a informal standpoint to just get their take on it. But I think some of those things would be certainly for our attorney to answer to on whether or not there's an opportunity to engage our Special Assessment Commission ahead of time, at least from a preliminary standpoint. But certainly, again, just want to reiterate the fact that these are preliminary, subject to change, and it is the Assessment Commission's responsibility to allocate that benefit.
Any other questions, Ms. George, that more clarification on?
I feel like as a city, being proactive as far as getting that information out prior to these projects is important, and that's the direction we should be going versus it's all done and then there's nothing you can do. It's got to be paid for. So I like the idea of, even if they're preliminary numbers, just, hey, this is coming, now is the time to speak up while we can still do something, versus when it's all done and it's too late.
A very great point. During the process, there were a number of public meetings held, and we had excellent turnouts about the concepts and designs, a discussion up front. So the public has been very engaged in that element of, of the process. But you're right. Now comes the rubber meets the road where you start talking about the dollars. So.
Yeah. Mayor, I have a couple of questions.
Commissioner Simmons.
Thank you. And actually, I'd like to get Lauren on because they're probably basically for her. But I'm very concerned about the business downtown. We all know what they've gone through with the COVID, and we don't even know if that's over yet. And even if it is over in a few months, it won't be, but if it's at least under control. Now we're going to do a road diet down there, and we're going to hit them again. And I honestly don't know how much more those businesses can take right now. I know a couple of them are doing very bad, and I don't think they're going to make it through a road diet. So I'd like to be assured from Lauren, as our economic development director, that she's talked to more than just a couple people down there as far as the businesses go. And also, I'd like to throw out the fact that if there's the question I wanted to ask the businesses through Lauren was, do they think it'd be better to do now or to hold off a year if we could still get the grant money, Dustin, that is, if we could hold off a year and give them a chance to recoup a little bit. So I've asked Lauren to do that, so that's where I'd like her to step in now and kind of answer those questions, just who she's talked to down there and what their opinions are.
Sure. Thank you, Commissioner Simmons, and thank you and the rest of the commissioners for your continued support of our downtown businesses and concern for them. That means a lot to those businesses and a lot to me, so thank you. Commissioner Simmons, I have spoken to many businesses downtown. Just today I talked to the VFW. I've talked to the Downtown Business Association in multiple meetings about the Road Diet project, and I've brought Dustin along with me. And we have asked that question to them frankly about, we understand that COVID has been difficult, and thank you for bringing that up. And what would this do, if we did even have to forego the grant and have to push it into following years out of concern for you? And the overwhelming response I've gotten is, please don't delay this project. This project has been kind of looming over the heads of a lot of our downtown businesses. They have to communicate that to their customers. They have to build that into their business plans. And so they've been ready for this to happen in 2021, even with COVID as a consideration. So we did ask that question, and that was the response from each of those businesses that I did reach out to. And that's also why I wanted the Downtown Business Association, now the Yards Business Association President, Nicole Dutton, to speak for the businesses, because I'm here to represent all businesses, but really we're looking at those downtown businesses and making sure that they understand the process. And, I have communicated a lot of what Dustin has communicated tonight to each of those businesses. So, Nicole, if you wanted to jump in and add anything more, please feel welcome to do so.
Thanks, Lauren, and thanks, Commission President and Commissioners, for taking the time to hear our voice as well. We do really appreciate the opportunity as well as the consideration. I am the current president of the Downtown Business Association, or also known as the Yards. We've had a lot of discussions over the last 6 months about road diet, about construction. When initially the project was brought to us, many of us had a lot of really big concerns about it, especially considering many of the businesses in the downtown area are new to that area, and we're still trying to develop it. We have a lot of vacant space, and we're still trying to grow it. And many of us feel that the area in and of itself needs more of a downtown look and feel. We need to have more of that beautification, that streetscape, the ability to have more fun outdoor activities for families, as well as nighttime activities. Getting the ability to host more events will help our downtown to grow, and also to just in general put West Fargo on the map even more. And that's going to be really hard to attract more businesses to our area, as well as more customers to our area, if we're delaying a construction project like this. I mean, if we can, I hate to put it frankly, but
if we can just get it done with and then move forward and look at our future and see what can we do from there, I think many of us are going to be very well off in that way. Yes, it will impact us. We are currently talking to downtown associations in Bismarck as well as associations in Grand Forks about how they handled their downtown construction. Demers was torn up throughout 2019, so we're trying to learn from them and understand how we can make the construction process a little bit easier. But overall, the general consensus from all of the businesses is that they had seen the issues that the sewer and infrastructure had caused, like what building is it? The Cheyenne Plaza getting flooded in the basement because of a really heavy storm, and the corner of, I think it's Second and Cheyenne being flooded when we have heavy storms, and that doesn't help us any either. So delaying would probably just make us have a more prolonged lack of sales, I think, and many others feel the same way.
Okay, Nicole, and I'm totally on board if that's the case, but I guess what I want to just make sure is, have you talked to like the VFW and the Silver Dollars, some of our our older that have been around a long time, I guess I should say, are you making sure you're taking care of them as well, and are they on board?
I talked to Kurt today from the Silver Dollar for quite a while about it. So, and he said he was the one who said he was on board as long as the specials were allocated fairly.
Yeah. Yes, and everybody definitely is on board with the construction. They feel that it's a means to an end to really make our downtown special and to make our downtown a destination, so that we can get more businesses as well as more customers to our area. And a lot of us just feel we need to be in constant communication with all of the folks at the city of how do we make sure that our customers can find us during construction, that we are communicating appropriately, that the city is helping us to do the same, to market to our customers, to make sure that we can get through this with as little impact as possible. And interestingly enough, we talked to the Grand Forks Association today, and they have had no business closure whatsoever throughout their construction process of Demers. So that's what we're after. We want to be able to make sure all of our businesses are sustained, and that we are going to have even more revenues after the fact, after the construction is done.
Okay, Nicole, thank you for answering that. I just wanted to make sure that you're on record as the DBA is for this. So I'll have some correspondence, Mayor, if I could, when we get to that point. But other than that, I'm fine with moving forward. I guess I think we should do it and figure out, it's got to be done. That's all. I mean, we got to get her done. So I'm okay with that. I just want to make sure everybody was on board, all the businesses. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional comments or questions? There's a very positive element to when you take a look at the finance sheet where the revenues come from, and the positivity of the fact that we have a grant, the fact that we're applying economic development dollars there, the fact that we're applying prairie dog dollars to it. And there's the part that I want to point out to the public is that I wished we could do this on all major projects within our community. If you take a look at what the special assessment is for the total dollars of the project, it's 17%, Not all of most of our projects, we're at somewhere around 60-40, if we're lucky, where the city is able to put in either capital sales tax or revenue bonds, and we're at about a 40%, and then we special assess 60%. So a comment that Commissioner George made, a comment that Commissioner Simmons made, this is a special type of project, and we are treating it as such. in the sense of how we're trying to make the numbers work. So from all of those people in the downtown, from those people in the assessment district, we've tried very hard to apply all the resources that we can towards this in order to make it as palatable as possible. And I give credit to my fellow commissioners, and I give credit to, engineering, and Tim's been involved in planning and zoning, Mrs. Fisk from administration, Mr. Larson from finance. So there's been a whole lot of folks that have been involved in this, in trying to bring this plan together. So, that being said, commissioners, what's your pleasure?
What are we exactly voting on again, Mayor?
We're going to award the contract for the Improvement District 3003, North Dakota DOT, PCN 22277, which is the streetscape.
I would make a motion to approve.
Approve the contracts as submitted. Low bid being KPH.
So moved.
Commissioner Simmons moves. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Jurdevig seconds. Been moved and seconded to award the contract what did I say? It's to go to underground.
Correct.
For the Improvement District number 3003, North Dakota DOT PCN 22277. Any other discussion?
Just one, Your Honor.
Please, Commissioner Olson.
With the special assessment at this level, which I am totally in agreement with, but are we setting a precedence for future projects in other areas of the city to expect the same consideration, or are we going to have to revert back to the, the larger portion of the funds being paid, or the project being paid for by the residents? I just want to bring that up.
Quite possibly, Commissioner. But there was a grant specific to, Main Avenue to 6th, 5th, excuse me. And so, there's extra dollars there. The benefit of the amenities that this is going to bring to our community, to the downtown, is going to generate more sales tax dollars, going to generate, hopefully, more property tax with additional development along the downtown Cheyenne Street corridor. So it's a valid question. That's why I brought it up.
That's exactly what I wanted to hear.
Thank you, sir.
That's why I asked the question. So this is why we're doing this, to generate more sales tax, which in the long run will decrease special assessments in the future for other projects. Thank you.
For the way the bids came in, this is one of the toughest decisions that this commission will make in 2020. There's no doubt about that. So that's why the Commissioner George and Commissioner Simmons and my other fellow commissioners, we've reached out and engaged with the public. Mandy today talked to Kurt Leopard of the Silver Dollar. Lauren Orchard's been talking with the DBA, and of course Nicole has been instrumental with the yards and the Downtown Business Association, and concerns with how it might affect the VFW. So the project is unique. We all recognize that, and I think that the commission has done a good job. Staff has done a good job of engaging with the public to really gauge the value of this, because again, it was higher than our estimated engineers' estimates. So that being said, I'm proud of the process that we've used. I'm proud that the commissioners have engaged. I'm proud that the staff is engaged. But nonetheless, this is one of the toughest decisions that we'll make in 2020, is to moving forward. So
I'll just throw out one more name real quick. I talked to Mark Knudsen of Wesco Square as well, and he was on board and supported the project.
Thank you, Amanda. So that being said, we have a motion and a second on the table to approve the contract for the Improvement District number 3003 for the streetscape in downtown Cheyenne Street Dakota Underground. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Commissioners. Item number 15 is the second reading of ordinance number 1158, the snow emergency route ordinance amending sections 2-0401 and 2-0402. Mr. Shockley.
Thank you, Mr. Commission President. Tonight we are just had a cleanup second reading, changing the ordinance to provide that the President of the Board of City Commissioners or in the absence of the President, the Public Works Director could declare a snow emergency. And it's just changing, that's the only change in the ordinances. We had done a first reading earlier this year, and as we were going through, making sure that towards the end of the year that we'd caught all of the ordinance changes, this one came up that it never got a second reading. There's been no changes between the first and second reading.
Thank you, Mr. Shockley. Questions for Mr. Shockley?
Just thankful we haven't had to use it yet.
I just have one question, I guess, John. Since this is a policy deal, and I guess it affects all of us, I'm just wondering where the street commissioner, why he wouldn't be as a public official behind the president of the commission. Why wouldn't the street commissioner holding that executive branch directive, so to speak?
When this was drafted, we tried to use the president of the commission and then the public works director, thinking that those two would primarily be in the know if there was a snow emergency. It's certainly up to the commission if you wanted to change that to the street commissioner. It's a policy decision of how you want it in the ordinance.
Myself, I would just think, when we do that, we get the crap a lot. I mean, we get the backlash, and I just would think that would be more of a commission position, to make that announcement or to do that declaration than it would be the street superintendent. That's just my opinion. Brad, you're there now, but you won't be there forever, hopefully.
Right.
So
I guess my thoughts on that, Mark, would be that our current public works director will probably be in consultation with me or other commissioners too, before he makes that call.
I would hope that, but that's not what it says.
No.
I mean, I don't know. I guess like I said, I just brought it up because I noticed it. I just think it should be a commission person doing that, making that decision, that executive decision.
Yeah.
And that would.
My assumption was like Commissioner Olson's, Commissioner Simmons, is that the street commissioner and the director of public works would have that conversation first before they called me. The expertise of Dan and Matt and their teams out in the street, and of course the forecast is what's going to really drive that as to whether or not we're going to declare this, that we've got X number of inches of snow coming. So that's the rolling the dice portion of it, because sometimes the weather people nail it and sometimes they don't.
It doesn't matter either way. I just thought it was a discussion we should have.
Yeah.
That's all.
Thank you, Commissioner Simmons.
I guess that would only happen in case that we couldn't get hold of the mayor.
Right, and I would think, Brad, as street commissioner now, you'd be in the end anyway. Even with that, you'd be in the end. Matt would be, wherever that position is. So that's fine.
You just can't let Bernie leave town.
Well, if you can't get a hold of me, I'm outside shoveling snow. So what's your pleasure, commissioners?
I move we approve second reading.
Thank you, Commissioner Olson. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner George seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the second reading of ordinance 1158, the snow emergency route ordinance amending sections 2-0401 and 2-0402. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Item number 16 is the City Administrator's Report. Mrs. Fisk.
Thank you, President Darlis and Commissioners. I have a few items here, and then when I'm done, I'd like to allow Police Chief Ordinance to talk to you about some really good news that he has received. And so I will give you my information and then let him talk. First of all, reminder, tomorrow night is Planning and Zoning. Watch in if you're interested. Secondly, on Thursday from 12 to 12:30 is the Greater Fargo Moorhead EDC annual meeting. It's virtual, and it's only a half hour long, 12 to 12:30. They've shortened it up because of the year that we're in. On the 14th, from 10 to 11, everyone should have an invite. Code enforcement, it'll be a virtual meeting with all of you to talk about where code enforcement is at, where we're headed, different thoughts, and just kind of give you a report and give you the opportunity to discuss it. Melissa will be on making sure that it's noted as a public meeting since we're asking for a quorum of the commissioners to be there. Let me see, the 18th from 8:30 to 10:30, we're working on with the county and the city of Fargo to set up a legislative event. And it will, what it's for is to take the ideas of what each community is looking for or hoping to accomplish in this next legislative session and put that forward to all the legislators and get everybody in the room and talk. So I know Bernie was working on some things with Melissa, and if any of you have certain key items that you think are vital that you'd like to be researched, brought up during the meeting, whatever, don't hesitate to reach out to myself, Melissa, Bernie, and get those passed on. I'm going to be having a preliminary meeting with Bruce Grubb, Mike Redlinger, and Robert Wilson from the county this week to just kind of set up a better outline and include a few things that Bernie had requested, just kind of work through the whole thing. So Melissa's on it. Bernie actually led her first, wanting to get something set up, and then the others ended up contacting. So thankfully, Robert Olson was able to secure the time, and the city of Fargo has the technology to be able to support the actual event. So any thoughts, comments, ideas, don't hesitate to reach out to us. We're happy to include them and talk through them. The only other thing that I have right now is I have just been meeting over the last week or two and next couple weeks with different department heads to make sure everything's going well and see where they're at with their goals and different things that they're working on. And I'm very proud to say that, as we all know, we have such amazing people that we work with, the department heads. They've been able to keep everything pulled together. We're on track. Staff is doing amazingly well. Our department heads are keeping track of their people, making sure everything's getting solved, and we're doing extremely well. So I just wanted to put that out there for you, and with that in mind, I will allow Mr. Chief Ordinance to tell you his great news.
Good evening, Chief.
Good evening, Mayor, Administrator Fisk, thank you, and Commission. I just wanted to come before you tonight and give you a little bit of good news from the police department side. We were recently, I guess just last week, in the middle of the week, given notice that we're being awarded just over $78,000 in grant funding from the state of North Dakota to hire a police officer, an additional police officer that wasn't funded for 2021. And the grant specifically that we applied for, I guess, will really be used to strengthen and expand kind of our community outreach and engagement programs. The grant was really kind of directed towards some of our vulnerable youth and our at-risk youth, and so we plan to work really strongly in coordination with the school district, our school resource officer program already, and all those folks that are involved to help us identify some of our at-risk youth and have some intervention before they become involved in the criminal justice system. So, and also with our cultural liaison officer. So I think this is a really great opportunity to really expand our community outreach and our engagement programs for a full-time police officer that can dedicate all of his or her time, whoever that may be,
to working with our most vulnerable youth in the community and try to keep them out of the criminal justice system. Maybe intervene with some good mentorship and coaching before that happens. So good news on that front that we were awarded that grant. So just want to share that with you tonight.
Thank you, Chief Honorness. Is there any questions from the commissioners? Our congratulations to you, Chief.
Good job, Chief.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
All right. Next order of business is correspondence. Commissioner Simmons, did you say you had correspondence this evening?
I do, thank you. I have actually two, and one is just a quick one for Melissa. Just wanted to remind her, to hopefully reach out to Wendy from the Pioneer when we're talking about communicating about our bonds and, and the good news we've got. I think she's a great person to get it into the paper and work with. And I already know she does that. I just wanted to slip that in. The other thing I wanted to bring up is the COVID. And what it's done to our community and the people it's affected and the businesses that it's affected, folks. They're hurting right now. I know of a couple that are in really, really tough shape. We're talking a couple months of survival here. I would like to ask the commission in just a correspondence way. I didn't put it on the agenda, but I'd like to ask the commission to have the staff get together, try to do some research. I read in the paper Fargo was doing this, so I know we're not Fargo, but it's a great idea. Get the department heads, or get our city, Tina, you of course, and Jim Larson, and see if there's something we can do for our businesses during this extremely hard pandemic. I know, we have some rainy day funds. I know we don't want to spend the money. I'm the worst on that, but I really believe we have to. The businesses have supported West Fargo for many, many years. I think it's time that we step to the plate and help them out a little bit. I know it's difficult, but I know you guys can come up. You're amazing, like you said, Tina. You can come up with some ideas on how we can help these businesses. I just truly feel they need our help. So I would ask that of you.
Thank you, Commissioner Simmons. I know Lauren's already been working on different items, and she was going to have a meeting with one of the business owners, I believe, and you. At some point, you guys have talked about that. So there's a bunch of different things. There's all kinds of programs out there, and we've got to be careful. It's a very slippery slope. There was a community in the state that was going to look at trying to give money back to businesses for lost profits, and that can't, there's no way to gather that and do that and have it be proper and not go broke. So, but there are things that possibly can be done out there, and Lauren is working on it, and we will all work together with her. Thank you.
I would appreciate that, and again, try to look outside the box a little bit, like we like to say, and again, with liquor license, we did that last year, and maybe we could do that again if we can afford it this year. We just need to try to help them and let them know we're trying to help them. That's all I ask of everybody, so thank you.
One of the things that the staff has been doing is anytime we get updates from from the Commerce Department and any of their programs and the like, communications has been resending that information out to the business communities and to make sure that they know that there's funds available, how to go about the applications and all that type of thing. So early on, and it continues, the ERG grants. Just as of last week, I know that there's more information that went out on the ERG stuff. So you're right, Commissioner. We need to do all that we can to support them, encourage the public, encourage staff to buy gift cards, and be sure and pick up something tonight on the way home for dinner if you can. Support them in any way that you can. But as Tina has mentioned, it's a difficulty. So. Some of them aren't doing too bad. Some of them are. And it's hard to pick and choose, so they have to come forward too. So we encourage the business community to reach out to economic development, reach out to your commissioners, reach out to the administration. That we need to be aware of what your particular circumstance is if you need some help and some guidance as to where to go. So good point, Mark. Anything else for correspondence, Tina? Any other commissioners have anything for correspondence? Tina and I continue to get COVID updates 3 times a week from Fargo Cass Public Health. The numbers are starting to come down a little bit. Today I shared with all of the commissioners and first responders that the COVID infections in the 58078 West Fargo zip code continue to fall. We were at a high of 324 just in the city of West Fargo, and now we're down considerably from that. And so I'll continue to share that data. That was something that was a little difficult to get from the governor's office, but nonetheless, the governor's office did step up with that, and I think it's a valuable tool. I share it with Barb at the Park District because of what they deal with the public. I share it with Bess Fletty, our superintendent of schools, Pierre Freeman, our emergency services, Chief Otterness, Chief Fuller, and all the commissioners. So we're trying to keep everybody aware, as well as the director of communications, so they can continue to share that with the public. So the numbers are falling. We're going to have to assign some of that some of the restrictions or some of the protocols that have been called forward. We're hoping and assuming that some of those are helping. Again, if in all these COVID discussions that we're having, with the cold weather and people going inside more, staying inside more, the numbers do not look good for January and February unless the vaccine is distributed. I have asked Public Health to be at our next commission meeting for an update with regard to the vaccinations. Supposedly we'll be seeing that some of the serum will be in state by next week, 6,000 vials, 6,000 plus. And they have a protocol as to how they're going to prioritize who gets it. And I wanted Public Health to tell you folks directly what it is, rather than us trying to share that and communicate it with you. So that will be in 2 weeks when we have our next commission meeting. They will be on hand to give you a first-hand accounting of how that's going to work. Does anyone else from the commission, any of my commissioners or staff, do we have any other non-agenda items that you'd like to discuss at this time? Commissioner Simmons.
Made a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second, please?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Olson. It's been moved and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We stand adjourned. Thank you all very much for all your time.
Thank you.
Bye.